Okay. All right, check. How's it going?
It's going well.
What's your name?
Nope.
No, okay, no worries. I guess
Nice try, though.
no, it's okay. It's okay.
Good effort.
It's okay. What I guess brought you, or what inspired you to come out here tonight?
So my incentive to coming out for here tonight is to engage in a productive conflict with other people that were attending the event. So I really enjoy debating with people that disagree with me in the attempt to hone my ability to persuade and debate and really just cognitively break down the things that I believe and to be able to counter and ingest, if they be valid, the ideas of other people.
Man, I was gonna totally ask something else. I guess what did you think of the rally?
I think it was a little bit shy, particularly with people that disagree with me. They would tend to walk away, shy away. But in all, people were fairly respectful. I mean, I got a couple of fuck yous and you're an asshole and blah, 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 passing comments. But for those that took the time to engage in an elongated conversation, many of them were actually fairly respectable people with fairly decent demeanors.
What are your thoughts on the events in Charlottesville last week?
Oh boy, that's a really big package to break down.
I guess in one sentence maybe, or a couple sentences.
That doesn't do it justice, I'm afraid. I understand the position of the alt-right and them feeling disenfranchised from large media corporations, CNN, MSNBC, and right now YouTube, and feeling like as if they are disenfranchised in the media, and it's an organic reaction to a lot of cis white male bashing, this anti-white rhetoric that you see in a lot of social media, a lot of mainstream media, and a lot of alternative media. So, and on top of that, you know, the adamant adamant desire to not reform immigration standards. And I also think it's an organic reaction to things that are happening in Sweden, Germany, London, UK in general, and Scandinavia in general, and Eastern Europe in general, with the bombings, with the vehicular terrorist attack. But I also think that it went way too fucking far. So once you have an organic reactionary movement reacting to an already aggressive movement, for example, Antifa, and a lot of heavy aggressive leftists, you're going to have violence in an environment like that. It's just going to happen. That conflict is also organic.
Do you believe white culture is being attacked in this country?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
In what way specifically?
So the idea that cis white male is a negative, something that can be pointed out as a negative.
Who's pointing it out as a negative?
Oh, you see Salon, a lot of Tumblr bait on there has a lot.
In what ways are they specifying it as a negative?
Well, the cis white scum, for example. Nobody really adds the word scum to an end of a term with a positive message. And on top of that, a lot of people are protesting Donald Trump because of the color of his skin. I thought that was absolutely absurd as well. I mean, imagine people protesting Obama because he was black.
Didn't that happen quite often?
Yes, no, it's unacceptable. But the idea that one is acceptable and the other is not is a problem. The idea that you can't be racist against white people is a huge issue. The idea that...
But isn't the institution of racism defined by white supremacy and keeping other types of races, people of color, down and oppressed?
No, racism is uniform. Racism, it doesn't...
Racism in this country has only been one-sided. It has only been the whites oppressing other non-white people, correct?
That's not true. The Irish were discriminated against for a tremendous long time. They were buried on the side of railroads.
That's not considered racism, though. That's considered prejudice, right?
No, that's very racist.
In what ways?
The idea that the ginger, right? For example, the ginger phase that went went along with the new South Park episode.
That's hair color, though. We're talking about race and skin color. So how does the idea of racism in this country affect a white person in a negative light?
Well, that's still a form of racism. It's still a form of melatoninal prejudice, if you will. I don't see how it's acceptable. I don't see how that's an acceptable standard to hold when essentially what you're doing is discriminating people based on.
What examples of racism against white people do you have?
Let me finish, buddy. If you want to ask me a question, I'll answer it, and then we can move on. Specific answers of race, examples of racism. Just in Walmart recently, I was called out for being a white male, right? For no other reason than that. We had a very rigorous disagreement just by the fact that I was white.
Was the person that called this out a person of color?
Yes. But that shouldn't matter. If I'm prejudiced towards somebody of a person of color, based on their skin color, nothing else, that's also racist. It's a two-way street. If you want equality, you have to start from a universal rule. You can't just have a one-way street in that sense. You have to base your assumption off of an individual based off of their qualities as an individual, and to deny that racism exists towards white people is to hold a double standard that really doesn't cut both ways as far as the universal value is concerned.
But as far as having specific examples, other than this one incident that you've named in Walmart, how have you as a white person been oppressed in this country because of your race?
I had trouble with college admission because I was white. I am at a lower acceptance rate despite having my GPA because I am white. International students are given priority because they are allowed to be charged larger tuitions because they are an international student. So the taxpayers get robbed because they are not the first to be able to get in line, even though they're subsidizing the property and the funding of that particular institution. So that's a good example of how racism is ingrained in a scholastic sense. Yeah.
So in those examples that you named, being limited in your ability to apply for college and being accepted
in college, yes, being at a lower standard of acceptance.
Institutions like that usually have those types of policies in place to be able to give non-white students a better chance because of the institutionalized racism that our country has been founded on, though, right?
No, it's all about funding. So, for example, the reason why you saw a large population of people talking about things like the false rape accusations that you see on campus a lot has to do with the implementation of Title IX and the funding that's associated with Title IX. So the more rapes you have, the more federal assistance you get to deal with those kinds of issues. The more particular ethnicities that you have in an acceptance program, the more federal funding you get. The more international students you receive, the more tuition you get to charge. So I think that's wrong. I think schools should serve their municipalities irrespective of the skin color applying, and not to mention the fact that schools by their very nature have to be meritocratic or merit-based. Merit-based. So it's unethical and prejudice to allow somebody in that hasn't run the gamut of a high GPA. And notice that most colleges don't care what you make, right? They care how high you score on your SAT, on your LSAT, on your GMAT, on your entrance exams, what your high school GPA was. So it's not even a racial thing. It doesn't even have to be. The problem is they make it one for federal funding and federal aid and federal quotas, and I have a huge problem with that.
Do you think we have a problem with white supremacy in this country?
We might later down the road.
Do you think we have one currently?
It's not a huge problem right now, but you see a lot of Gen Xers subscribing to white nationalism. And I think that's, like I said, it was an organic movement, an organic response, which sadly was totally avoidable. I honestly thought the millennials were going to be the first generation to completely avoid seeing people as a certain color and determining their ideas for their own merits and their character for their own merits, as opposed to their ethnicity. But that didn't happen. It's unfortunate, and so now we have to transition our bullshit into the next generation that isn't quite as worldly as we've gotten to be, or an absence thereof.
If you think that we maybe will have a problem with white supremacy, if you think that we maybe will have a problem with white supremacy either now or in the future, what do you think we can do to combat that?
So the problem is we make a lot of money off of racism. We do.
In what way?
So a lot of media race baiting. CNN gets excellent views. That's their main staple, off of calling people racist, having reactionary opinions, and having that cycle of blame. I'm sorry, these guys are really loud.
You want to move over here?
Yeah.
No, we can move over here. Thank you for taking your time to talk to us, by the way.
Huh?
I said thank you for taking the time to talk to us, by the way. We really appreciate it.
Continue, but these guys are...
No, it's okay. It's okay. So the question again was, if you think that we maybe will have a problem with white supremacy either currently or in the future, how can we combat that?
Stop having institutional policies incentivized based on skin color. Stop having as many news story run with the intention of focusing on race for views. That's what it is. I mean, any journalist worth their salt understands that racism makes a lot of money in any ethnicity. They jump on that shit. They love it. So you need to have a lot more of a civil media when it comes to what they need to understand what their impact is once they publish something. And I'm not saying that they should ignore it in the sense that, oh shit, there's a racial hate crime, we shouldn't report on that. But making it inflammatory and having shit like, it's a white lash after Donald Trump's election, when I think it was predominantly economic. His election was due to the disparaged middle class and the out of work blue collar worker. But the problem is we magnify it to an extent that it's kind of unnatural, and we make a lot of money off of it. The other thing I have a problem with is stifling intellectual diversity. So, for example, if I'm a conservative and you're a far-left libertarian, you believe in communism, whatever, we should be able to sit down and have a cup of coffee and debate without having to swing fists. And the fact that things like bash the fash is a thing, suggesting that you should take a stick to anybody that disagrees with you, that's absurd. Well, and again...
You seem to be kind of okay with absurdity, though.
I am okay with absurdity as long as it's not enacted. So
how do you walk that line?
So you can yell and scream and disagree with me all you want, but when you throw a punch or when you put your hands on me, that's when the line is drawn past your ability to transit ideas.
So emotional and mental violence in your case is okay, but physical violence you're against?
Well, emotional and mental violence isn't violence. That's just narration and ideas.
But if you're spewing hateful ideas, or if you're supporting people that do spew hateful ideas, then that can have a negative mental and emotional effect on somebody, correct?
I mean, sure it can, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're physically damaging somebody. Nobody went into the ER because they had a conversation with somebody they disagreed with.
Duly noted, for sure. I don't know. I don't think of any other questions for you. I definitely appreciate your perspective.
No problem.
And appreciate you sharing your thoughts.
Like, for example, you wearing this shirt is not going to is not the same thing as me going around and molesting people. It might irritate some people, but that's fine. You know.
You like it for the shock value.
Because it brings wonderful people like you talking to me, and so hopefully I can hone my arguments and hone my ideas and sharpen that intellectual stick.
But you wouldn't actually go and sexually assault a female? But you support the man in office who does say that that's okay.
Well, no. If they let you do it, that was taking his quote into context. If somebody lets him grab them by the pussy, that's not sexual assault. That's consensual. So no, I don't agree that he advocates for sexual assault. I think that's silly. If you take the full context of his quote, it's the antithesis of sexual assault. It's consensual fondling.
He said that if you're famous, they let you do it. So do you think having a certain level of fame allows you to move on somebody, whether maybe they reject or not reject?
Well, if they're actively rejecting you, then you should stop. It's as simple as that. But if they let you do it, that's a consensual relationship. That's consensual contact.
But if by letting you do it, that should usually mean that the consent is there prior. But if you just go up and grab someone and they don't stop you, there was never any consent in the first place, though, right?
Huh? Well, that's like saying, well, yeah, I mean, if you're going around people and just grab them by the pussy, but if you have a long conversation with them and you flirt with them a little bit and you go in, there's no resistance, then that's an amicable contact. Now, if somebody says, no, fuck off, don't touch me, of course, that's rejection. Just like with any other form of communication, it has to be reciprocated. So, no, I don't agree with, grabbing up the drunk girl that can't communicate, but I also disagree with not making an attempt at all. You see, just like going in for a kiss. Either somebody goes, no, fuck off, or they go, bring the tongue in and all that kind of stuff. Oh, now I'm getting lewd. There is a mutual contact in that interaction. So, in absence of that mutual contact, then yes. I mean, in absence of non-mutual contact, then yes, I'm okay with it.
You seem to be an articulate, well-spoken person, and I think the points that you've made are sound. My question, though, is you just got done explaining the reasons why you don't personally believe the shirt that you're wearing in a literal sense, right? But how do you feel, though, that other people might take that interpretation of the shirt as not being figurative but being literal, and having the authority now from people like you that decide to wear the shirt and from the president himself to actually go out and commit these types of sexual assaults on someone like your mom or your sister or your wife or your daughter? Like, do you think that could definitely be a problem?
Well, no, I can't.
Because not everyone is smart and intelligent and able to distinguish that, but as you are, right? So don't you think that while there are people like yourself that are intelligent enough to make that distinction, I think there's a lot of other people in the world that support this president and would support wearing that shirt that can't make that distinction. Do you agree?
No. I think most human beings, unless they're psychologically disturbed, are capable of differentiating between reality and fiction. Just like people don't go they don't know how to operate an assault rifle because they play Call of Duty, and they're not going to go shoot up a school because they play Call of Duty. Most people shoot up schools because they're mentally inept or mentally disturbed or don't have that distinguishable connection between fantasy and reality. Just like somebody that wears this shirt, a vast majority of the time has a pretty sound connection between fantasy and reality, which is why they're not going to try and jump off a building and defy gravity. The people you're talking about are usually the kind of people that think gravity don't exist and can't make a distinguishable connection between cause and effect. And the people that you're talking about also go to prison. So that kind of works itself out.
Awesome, man. Well, definitely appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
No problem.
And we hope you have a good night.
Am I going to see myself on Facebook?
Yeah, probably not. Honestly, this is for this YouTube channel thing that I'm trying to start, where I go out and just interview people from all walks of life from across the spectrum.
May I get the channel?
Right now, it's called Dave in the World without the E. Dave without the E, D-A-V.
So Dav in the world.
Yeah, exactly. I've been getting a lot of feedback about that name recently, so I potentially might change it. There's only one video up right now, and it is just asking people how they think Trump's doing the first 6 months. So it was
on the brink of death.
Oh, no, it's all good. But yeah, man, so I don't know.
It's taken a long time. I was constipated with that video.
But yeah, we definitely appreciate you coming out and taking the time to chat with us.
No problem. I am here for productive communication.
Awesome, man.
Give me 1 second. This thing is having a not
Those
such a good time.
Those androids, man, So those androids, man.
Those androids, yeah.
Those damn androids.
Well, they're better than the same phone the next year. I will say that. I've got diversity.
There you go. There you go.
Them apples.
That's
hey,
good.
Guys, if you're pro Android, you're pro diversity.
That's funny. That is
Love
funny.
your platform, baby. I mean, unless you're like working for Google and censoring different types of political channels, then you're anti-diversity. Shame on you.
Oh, that whole memo thing that came out or whatever. I haven't read all about that, but
It's worth a read.
Yeah.
And even if you disagree with it, I think it's only fair to read the entire read it in its entirety and break down the ideas it represents, as opposed to assuming that it's bad.
no, that's I think definitely the best approach to take with any issue. You know.
We've had a sore lack of representation of primary sources in the media. You can't just copy and paste somebody else's story assuming that the rhetoric is correct without reading source material. I really don't like that. I think it's very irresponsible.
I agree. I definitely think on both sides there's not as much primary research that's done, and
More research. We need scientists, not a fucking journalist right now. Give us the numbers, baby. I love me some math. I love.
for sure, man.
Wow, I look really just really queenie right now.
It's okay. Queenie's good. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much, and I guess check out the channel. I don't even know if any of the stuff we use tonight is going to make the cut because the lighting is terrible. Not even just this, like all the other stuff too. So I don't know. It's gonna depend on really the lighting and the editing. So awesome, man.
Is that I thought that was a Darth Vader t-shirt.
Dude, I wish it was a Darth Vader t-shirt.
You have like the light panel. Okay. It's committing harikiri right now.
Yeah.
Send kill itself over that video.
Are you gonna be like my second subscriber?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
I got this girl the other day out here to be my first subscriber. She's like, "Yeah, man, I'll subscribe." I'm like, "All right."
If I see my face.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Awesome, man. Well, have a good night.
You said it was
Dov in the world.
Dov in the world.
Dov in the world. That'll be easier to remember.
Yes.
To remember.
All right, man.
Awesome.
I'll see you later, Dov.
Thanks, man. Have a good one. All right. I think that's the night, guys. Had some good convos. Talked to some good people. I'm really glad we honestly talked to the Trump guy. I mean, I honestly thought we would have more people on his side out here, for real. And he seemed to really be the only one. And he was cool enough to take some time and chat with us and share his thoughts. I disagreed with pretty much all of them, but you know, that's what nights like this are about, is going out, talking to people, getting perspectives, even if you don't agree with them. So we'll see how the final video comes together, y'all. Peace.